Hello, everyone, and welcome for another episode of You're Not Ready for This. This week, we saw the movie Last Night in Soho, and we're gonna be giving you our in and outs and what we thought about the movie. And here with me, like every other week, is my friend Kevin. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, man. I gotta say, this movie was quite the experience.
I agree. It was pretty. From my standpoint, it was pretty enjoyable.
I myself didn't see any promotional material
Okay.
when we decided to pick this movie for the review, and it was rather welcome. Kind of going in blindly, like nowadays you go and see a review for a movie like a teaser trailer, and it's like, man, I already saw the movie.
Yeah, it is funny because a lot of times they'll show you the end of the movie before you even see it in the trailers. But I actually did see some stuff about the movie previously, so I was already interested in watching it. I just had not gone to the theater or gotten around to watching it. So when it popped up on streaming, I was pretty excited to be able to check it out. Now the good thing though, from my standpoint, is from watching the trailers. I was it wasn't exactly what I expected it to be, so that was good. So it wasn't like the trailers, quote unquote, ruined the movie for me.
Do you think it was sort of a bait and switch, or you didn't get that
No,
feeling?
no, I don't think so. I think it was just my preconceived notion of what was going on was different from what was actually going on. Like in my mind, from watching the trailer, I felt like, oh, this is happening. And then when watching the movie, I was like, oh, that's not the direction I was thinking.
That's interesting. So to give you kind of the how can we say the our impressions we go without going to any spoilers first. For me, it was a rather entertaining movie. It's a movie mostly kind of a. It starts very humble, very small, but it's already throwing you a lot of hints here and there of what's going on with with the characters, and the way that each one of them kind of partakes on their roles and how the movie kind of develops. It started a bit slow for me, and I kind of was seeing some of the disparities of society and people with different upbringings kind of clashing in London, and kind of how that whole scenario was developing while other things were happening on the background. And yeah, it definitely ramped it up at some point, and the movie didn't stop after it started picking up the pace for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It was pretty cool to see, the character from basically like a portion of the country that was um, out, not in the big city, and then she transitioned into the big city, and she was, uh, I think she was kind of hit hard as far as all the stuff that was going on. She wasn't used to it, so it was definitely pretty interesting from that standpoint. And yeah, I agree. I thought the character development was really good. It kind of gave you a little bit of a background story on the main character as she progressed through the movie. So I thought they did a really good job on that.
I believe this is the third movie or the second that obviously Kevin and I have other conversations of the recordings and about some movies or actors, actresses are performing recently. And I believe this is the third or second movie that we see Thomasin McKenzie.
Yeah,
Uh,
she was in old.
she was on old, and I saw her on Jojo Rabbit. I don't know if you've seen that one, but
I have not seen that one. No, I
yes.
think the only other one I've seen her in was old. But her performance in this one was fantastic.
Yeah, she being the main role, and I would have thought that Anya Taylor Joy was gonna have a more central role. Technically,
Yes,
she did,
she did.
but not in the way that I was expecting, and that was rather refreshing. And I think all of them did a fantastic job. Even Matt Smith, he also was owning that role.
Oh, I agree. I thought the acting and all the all the actors that played in the movie were all fantastic. It was I thought the movie was very well directed. It was shot beautifully, and the acting I thought was great. I do have to say though, Anya Taylor Joy, she commands every scene that she is in.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
whether she's overjoyed with happiness, distress, or conveying sadness, frustration, it definitely come a long way in recent years. Like obviously, the first role that I saw her in was in that Queen's Gambit they had
Okay.
on Netflix. After that, I've been looking at other media that she's produced in recent memory.
Yeah, the first one movie I saw her in was Split, the M Night Shyamalan movie that was
Mm.
actually a sequel to Unbreakable, which nobody knew was a sequel to Unbreakable until the end of the movie, and I was totally lost because I had not seen Unbreakable, so I didn't get the whole you know, oh wow, this is a sequel to in the same universe. So I was totally lost. But yeah, she was excellent in that as well. But yeah, she knocked it out of the park in the Queen's Gambit for sure.
Yeah, I gotta say this movie has a lot of imagery and storytelling that is not just people saying things like it's the classic show don't tell kind of a medium because
Yeah,
there's a few points that uh, they're showing you and you're kind of making the connections and you're wondering what's going on here. Though gotta say some of the reveals are kind of a oh when they kind of have to say it because there's no other way to make the connection unless they use like flashbacks or imagery in some point. But
right.
but overall, I was rather I gotta say whether I was trying to figure out what was going on in the movie. I'm not gonna say that I didn't suspect what was gonna happen at the end, without going into
Sure.
spoilers. The twist kind of got me by surprise because I was not even considering it, and I'm usually you know me I'm usually kind of overthinking movies that I shouldn't maybe just shut down my brain and go with it. But I was kind of paying attention and uh, maybe because of the exposure of certain characters, I was like, I'm not even considering X or Y going on in the movie. But I say I really like it for a movie with the kind of a suspense and storytelling that it was driving. It was very well put together.
Yeah,
Uh,
I definitely agree, and yeah, you're right. I tend to be the one that shut my brain off and not really try to figure out twists and whatnot during movies. And also, obviously, I had no idea in this one. I didn't suspect the twist at the end, but there was definitely some when you go back and you think about it, there was foreshadowing throughout the movie about the twist. So I'm sure a lot of people did figure it out. Um, so that was interesting. The aspect that I wasn't anticipating was it turned not necessarily into a horror movie at the end, but there was a lot of horror type aspects to the second half of the movie, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing because I enjoy the horror genre, but it there was some definitely some interesting. And it's tough without giving stuff away, but there was definitely some interesting aspects of it from a horror standpoint.
I mean, definitely the. I guess if you agree with me, I think we can do the spoiler warning. Like if you want to get a bit more in depth with the movie. Um,
For
over
people who haven't seen it yet, yeah, we're gonna probably go and start talking about some spoilers. But that being said, definitely recommend checking it out
Definitely give it a watch. Give it a pause here to the podcast. Go watch the movie and then come back.
because I can't talk about the things that I didn't care for in the movie without spoilers.
So going to spoilers now. The main character, Louise Turner, that is the role that Thomasin McKenzie is playing. From the obviously they give you the hint at the beginning that obviously she's kind of experiencing things that normal people don't, and those that are closer to her, that in this case her grandmother, is kind of the only one that knows about it, and that's how we open the movie, kind of okay, this person is sensitive to things that normal people aren't. And even though at the first you can kind of dismiss it and put it in the back of your mind, it plays a very heavy role there down the line when she eventually is kind of having this otherworldly experience that for me at some point how they're presenting it, it started to seem like she was dreaming or having these sort of visions about herself in another persona that she kind of aspired to be. And the part that we were talking, like the dichotomy or the distress that she was feeling when she moved back to London, how the modern times and her conservative backgrounds were colliding, and how that forced her to move to the perfect scenario for her, being a sensitive person. I don't know where to call her, a medium would be. Kind of a start experiencing everything from going there, and that's for me when the movies start picking up because then you're starting to pick up interest of wait, what's going on here.
Yeah, and we kind of saw it right from the get go, where we could see that she was, seeing her mother, and she was talking to her, but they didn't give the impression that she was actually communicating with her. It was more that she saw her mother's image. We got to see that pretty early on in the movie, and we also got to see that her grandmother knew that she was able to see her mom, and they didn't go into a lot of depth on it. They only kind of touched on it a little bit. So that was kind of interesting because it left a little bit of a mystery as to what, like you said, was she a medium, or was it just her mom, or what can she see or not see, blah blah blah. So it was definitely an interesting aspect.
Yeah, and I kind of fell in love with the imagery in the movie because from the point that she moved into this place for the landlady, it's giving her stay so she can move away from all the distress that commingling and have been with on the dorms with other students her age. It's kind of colliding with her upbringing, and I love when she put on the bed sheets over her, and it's kind of this hallway that
Man, that
then
was an amazing scene.
it's kind of transporting her to this other place that you say, wait, what's going on? And she's always talking about the old days being better or the music that they make a hint at it when she's putting all the vinyls on her luggage.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what about your socks? And no, she's all that is in her mind is the music that she grew up with. And then when she's transported to this alleyway, then she's on a scenery that's way from the past, and she's being received like this persona, very elegant, and you're seeing her on her pajamas, and then you start seeing the whole all the shots that there's a mirror. This is where they introduce the character of Sandy, that is played by Anya Taylor Joy. Then you see, wait, she's hair and not hair, and then you start with the whole play that you're each time that there's a mirror you're paying, or at least I was like looking at the mirrors, like what's going on in the mirrors, because
Yeah,
they're switching place constantly. And
it was so well done.
yeah, what do you think about this that whole scene that they're dancing and they're switching between one and the one they're they meet up with the Matt Smith that is playing the character Jack.
Yeah.
Here the it's kind of a, I guess later on you figure out that he's scouting people for gentlemen clubs. What do you think of that whole scene that they're dancing with him? Like in one shot, it shows the character of Sandy, and then it changes to Louise. But it all looks like it's the same shot. I'm curious how they did that whole uh, recording of that scene.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of reading on it, and it sounded like they did quite a bit practically. So they only had a little bit that they did with CGI. So the way they filmed it must have been really really well done because it was pretty amazing. So yeah, I really enjoyed that scene quite a bit. The when I was watching the trailers, I was under the impression that they were communicating with each other, Eloise and Sandy, that they were like communicating with each other, or that one of them was basically not necessarily controlling the other one, but they were mirroring each other, and because of those mirror type scenes. But obviously, we know now from watching the movie that that wasn't the case. That she was just visually looking into Sandy's life.
And if at first I thought it was a dream because it felt just like she had no place to belong or being accepted, and obviously at least was my impression by not seeing the trailers, that all this it was her constructing some place to escape to, that she could fulfill her dreams or fantasies, like this romanticized idea of what would be ideal. But unfortunately, like things go on the development of the movie, you can see how that imagery and duality it starts crumbling. And at first, I still at that point felt the notion that it was like a dream, or the visions were kind of a crumbling, because then you start seeing she even dyes her hair like to reflect. She was so enamored with this idea. I even thought that she was kind of going through some identity crisis or dysphoria or something on that manner, because she started
Yeah,
adopting then she wanted to make the quote unquote dreams or visions a reality, and she started buying clothes this is way expensive out of her reach, and she had to go look for a job. And there I kind of start seeing how when she's trying to get away from reality and just get through the day, she even rejects the John, I believe was the name's
it was
character.
John.
Yeah,
Yeah, because he asked her out, or he asked her if she had plans that night, and she said, "Yeah, she does," and because she wanted to go back to dreaming, quote unquote, dreaming about Sandy.
yeah, she wanted to escape this reality and go to those dreams, but for her horror and kind of a shut her expectations. And again, this is where the imagery of the movie plays a very well uh, organized sequence of events. Like when she's standing on the gentleman's club after Sandy on her visions is recruited, and you think, oh, then she's gonna be like the main actress, singer, or performer for a club or whatever. You find out that she's just a backstage dancer, and not to discredit the role of a backstage dancer, but obviously it was not to what she was aspiring for, or at least what she was seeing on the visions. And it's how those imagery start shattering, even to the point that they put her on that room that she's looking. Sandy is looking at herself in the mirror, and she
Yeah,
punches the mirror. It's quite literally the imagery of shattered dreams and expectations. Like this is not what I wanted,
yeah,
and
that's when she grabbed her, right?
not at that point. It was just right
Okay.
after when Jack kind of goes and pick her up.
Oh,
Uh,
what? This was when she was in the dressing room.
in the dressing room, and
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Jack goes and picks her up, and when the doors open, you see Eloise with the haircut that she got that was similar to Sandy, opening the door instead of Sandy, and then you start seeing the whole switch back and forth between
Yeah.
them. She assuming the role, she living through the eyes of Sandy, and then you see that obviously the this personality that she was falling in love with ends up being that he basically was recruiting her. They even went to the extent of punching someone else to make a show to
Mm.
gain her trust, and
Yep.
that was very low. Like then you can see the realization when they go walking by. I believe it was Eloise at that point that is walking by, like walking away from the stage when Sandy was performing as a back dancer, and she sees the guy that Jack punched to make a scene to like, oh, he's my knight in shining armor rescuing me from this creep. No, it was all set up just to get her at
Yep.
that point of vulnerability. And
Yep.
unfortunately, I guess that was the reality for a lot of women at that point,
Well,
especially in that business.
even prior to her becoming the backup dancer, he brought her in for the quote unquote audition where she did a cappella singing in front of the gentleman that was supposed to be, I guess, the club owner or whatever. And then she ends up just being the background dancer. So that was probably set up as well, as far as she's not in her mind, she was probably auditioning for a future in entertainment, whereas in reality, that was just another setup.
And you can see there when they present another gentleman there in the club, like basically to go and sleep with the guy. She's like talking to Jack, like, "Are you okay with this?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm okay with it, baby, whatever." And
Yeah,
it was so infuriating, and she starts walking away, and I kind of love that thing because at that point you all the duality you see either through mirrors or I forgot to say colors. They use the color red and blue very prominently. You know, when outside of her window, there was like this sign for a bistro from 1955 or something like that, and
yeah,
the colors are alternating, and you can see
yes,
when she's standing, like it kind of turns between red and blue, and it's like everything is very nuanced. Like even they got that, like the changing of there's two things going on. And in that scene that Jack goes after Sandy and the Gentleman Club, that she was mad and frustrated that the person that she was falling in love with was basically selling her. Uh, you see her turning around, and obviously that should have been a CG effect that they change from Sandy to Eloise, and it like pushes him away and like get off her. Like she said no, and she starts running away, and then you start seeing all those images of other women um, being kind of a, this is not what I was signing in for, and doing
right.
a lot of acts with things that most likely they didn't want to do at first, and they even make a reference to a woman that is talking on a payphone, like the same way that Eloise was talking to her grandmother in a corner, kind of
Yep.
a shying away, like, oh man, this she was lying to her grandmother, but basically this is not what I signed for. That all these live people that are obviously from a different upbringing. Man, I hate it. I think I'm going a bit back here, but I hate it. I don't know what you think about her roommate. That he,
What was her name? Tocasta?
Joe Casta, if I'm not
Joe
mistaken.
Costa.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
man, it was such a classic, like the roommate that it was
Oh, it was typical. Yeah.
man, and they were being it just tells you how competitive they were being, like, oh, my father or my mother killed themselves, and they were being competitive of like, oh, my mother took her life, and oh, my mother hanged herself or whatever, and she was kind of trying to up the ante on
She
something
was.
as
Yeah.
tragic as that.
She was obviously a typical bully character. She was definitely a bully. She didn't care about anybody except for herself, and so she would only use people to gain an advantage for herself.
And in the setting it kind of portrays that it's on the timeline that Eloise is living is basically modern day, and I it's one of those things that, man, how much life imitates art or art imitates life, kind of a one way or the other.
Hmm.
I could definitely see that happening to someone like.
Oh, most definitely. You can obviously see that she's never really experienced. Would she say she was in London, but she was only a child when she was there? So she's never been into that kind of situation as an adult. She's been out, in segregated out from the big city, and so she hasn't had any of those experiences. So it was a huge shock, a culture shock to her when she came into the city, and she didn't. I think she knew, but it still surpassed her expectations, and she was definitely overwhelmed. And obviously, you have the characters like her roommate, being the way she was, and instead of helping her out, she was more against her, even though she gave you the impression that she was going to be friendly at first. But she was not expecting that kind of situation. I don't think at all.
Oh no,
Uh,
and I kind of brought this point up that we pass up because I believe, and I can be way off here, that obviously they created all this background not only to have the character of Eloise move to the setting that she needed to be in to partake on these visions or dreams that we'll find out eventually down the line, why she was there and why she was having those visions, is that she's able to empathize even more with the discomfort and kind of an alien feeling of expectations being shattered that Sandy is having on her visions. And when she's running away, we even go to the scene that she's in the same room that she's staying and sleeping, and she sees Sandy on the bed, and she sees the man standing up near the bed, and it's like, oh, so she did it.
Yeah.
She did it for the money because she had no other way out.
Yeah.
And you can see that how it's kind of starting to reflect on the mental health and how people are reflecting upon Eloise on real life when she started tearing down the dress that she was making that originally was inspired on the first vision that she had of Sandy. And at first you think, man, these visions that she's having are gonna be very catalyst for her inspiration to go down this fashion designer job that she wants to eventually have. Well, obviously, she's on college and taking the classes, but that's kind of her background. At that point, I didn't feel that the movie was gonna be like a horror or be like
Right.
a murder case or so on. So,
Yeah, I didn't get a feel for the horror aspect until it actually kind of hit you in the face.
but yep, I hit you right in the face because right after that, she start having the visions, and from being eager to go to sleep to have the visions, she's becoming hesitant to go and see this reality that's starting to weigh on her, not only with the baggage that he has of her own reality. Now she has the baggage of this character that she's been dreaming with, that she now has to carry all those negative emotions and uh, frustration that she was basically lost. And she started playing a character because then you start seeing how different gentlemen are sitting down with her, buying her drinks, and how, oh, what's your name, beautiful? And she's like saying a different name each time. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Alexi, I don't know the other name that she used. Andy, at some point she said, but there's one guy, and this was for me that was the kind of a plot twist in the way that they were setting it up, and they
It
put
was
the
because I didn't catch it either.
yeah, the way that they were pulling it under the rock, under you. It's like there's one individual in that whole scene that
He was different.
he was different because he asked for her name, and she's like says a name, and he's the first one. All the other ones said, "Oh, that's a lovely name,"
Yep.
and he's the first one that says, "That's not your name. What's your real name?"
What's your real name?
But obviously, we kind of found out later that he's a police,
Right.
a detective, and that's why he was able to catch on to that.
Well, and he was trying to help her, and unfortunately, she didn't listen at that point in time.
She was already so down this rabbit hole on her life that she was not able to pull herself out.
Yeah, it
Uh,
wasn't that she didn't want to listen to him. She almost physically and emotionally couldn't at that point in time.
I don't know whether this is the first time that there's a physical interaction between Sandy and Eloise, because this gentleman tells
He
Sandy
tells her to look in the mirror.
to look in the mirror, and she doesn't want to look in the mirror, and she breaks the mirror and hugs her. Like
Yeah,
I
because Eloise was screaming at her to look at her at that point in time. You know, she wanted her to look in the mirror to see herself or see her, because she was at that point was still trying to convince her to, get out of doing what she was doing and whatnot. But, at that, and this is where I'm not 100% sure. But I don't think that there was any interaction between the two, as far as even when she did break the glass and grabbed her, she had no reaction that she was being grabbed. So from my standpoint, I don't think that Sandy recognized or knew that Ellie actually existed.
no, at that point, obviously, it's a vision of the past, like we learn further down
Right.
the line. But I think it's very telling that the quote unquote the barrier that was there is shattered, because then Eloise started having very vivid dreams of the reality that was for Sandy, she starts seeing this imagery of gentleman ghosts without faces haunting
Yeah,
her, and this is where the
yeah.
movie start taking that point of being kind of a
There,
horror.
it was a horror aspect, but we didn't really understand why or who these people were until at the very end.
And I kind of like what they did there and not, and I think I'll say why not later. But it was kind of a she having this vision and she trying to get away from it, and obviously she been anxious about not going to sleep and keep having these depressing visions. John that has been kind of the boy that was interested in her, to be quite frank, but being nice about it. If you see it that way, like he was like, okay, at your pace, and I'm sorry, and like he
Yeah,
he was being the actual gentleman, everything going on.
I really liked his character. There was some aspects of the character that I didn't like more, mainly that he kind of just like popped up out of nowhere very conveniently. But obviously, it's a movie. But yeah, I really liked his character because he was a legitimate good person, and he was trying to sympathize and empathize and understand what she was going through. And I really enjoyed that aspect too from a mental health aspect as well, because obviously he could see that she was having some mental issues during that point in time. You know, he didn't understand or know what she was going through, but he wasn't dismissive of him, and he was actually trying to get her to open up and talk and help her. So I really like that aspect of it.
Yeah, and it's funny the detail that he drank a Coca Cola that she had on the fridge, and he kind of apologized by handing one back, saying sorry. You know, the very small things. He was
Yeah.
offering to help with the baggage, and um, I know that obviously everything is on the eye of the beholder, but he was being nice about it, and it got to the point that he's seen her like distressed and on the classroom. Hey, you okay? Like you can talk to me,
Yep.
and it's difficult like to open to someone that you just know from a few days, to be quite honest. But and
It
any
is.
but anyone out there that obviously is going through some sort of a situation that they need to vent out and don't have the confidence that unfortunately that's the problem with mental health. You might have friends and family and you might be going through something and you're not able to reach out to them. It's because most likely you need to have that affirmation from someone from your external cycle sometimes. I guess that's how um, we work as a species, and it's kind of demonstrated there that all the time that her grandmother is saying to her on the phone, like, "Hey, if you need to come back, come back. You can talk to me. Do you need help? Are you okay?" And she was, "I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm working at this place." She kind of was bottling all those emotions, even though it was her grandmother, and from the beginning of the movie, you understand that they love each other very much. I thought the only thing that she got left, being that her mother obviously took her life,
Yep.
that is something that is brought up against her when she started having these visions of the ghosts, and she witnesses the what she understands the murder of Sandy at that point. How that kind of turns out to a very sour turn. She goes to the
Yep.
police and they don't believe her. Gotta say that her demeanor and makeup didn't help because they went to a Halloween party.
She was still at the Halloween party makeup, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she had like the black on her eyes, and even though she washed her face, obviously the scene quite literally. If you were in that room interviewing a pencil with that makeup getup, you will definitely think that there was something off.
Oh yeah, and that's why they thought she was like hopped up on some, drugs or alcohol or something.
And it's awful that that would be the assumption of the detective. There's another lady on the interrogation that is the only one that actually listened to her and kind of I'll look further into this, and you actually find out later that she was actually looking into it.
Yes.
But then she kind of decided to take things on her own onto her own hands because otherwise her mental health wouldn't withstand. And there's where you see she looking into the murder cases, and she start picking up that she believes There's an old man that has been hanging out around Soho. She's the first time that she saw that gentleman is coming out of a apparently a gentleman club or some sort of store of that matter, and obviously she put like a mental pin on that, and she started hitting how that person is like the has tentacles and he's kind of going all around, and obviously the environment is tricking you, like the people surrounding Eloise kind of saying these things and painting the picture, or at least how we receive it, that this man is the same one that killed Sandy on her dreams. But
Yep.
but it's funny because then I was looking at the guy and I was looking at Matt Smith, and I gotta be quite honest. I don't remember if that's something natural that he has, or they did it for the picture. He had like a scar on his forehead, and
Mm.
I was looking for the same scar on the old man, and I didn't see it. And not that at that point I was thinking otherwise, but when she kind of goes after him, she makes the accusation when she's on her night job that I know what you did to Sandy, and he's being very dismissive about it.
Right.
And it's not until they go out of the bar that he is hit by a car, and they say, "Oh man, Luis didn't deserve that or whatever." And it's like, no, his name is Jack. No, he's a Luis. He was a cop, and that's when she makes the realization that the same cop that spoke to her, to Sandy on the vision or dream that she was having, is actually the person that is in front of her. So the Jack that she was thinking that it was the murderer, it was not him. And
Right.
this is when she has the whole realization that everything that she believes is all upside down, and she's like, I gotta get home. I gotta go see my grandmother and get away from this place. And
Yeah.
that's where John appears again to kind of support her. And
Yeah. Awfully convenient.
I gotta say, very convenient. And they go, and they finally go back to her place, and they're talking to she's talking to a landlady that she's gonna be leaving, and the landlady is like serving tea and talking to her. Oh man, there was a officer that came making questions about you and all that, and there's when you start making this is the big reveal, I guess, at that point that
Yeah.
I gotta be honest, it's the first time in a few years that I didn't make the direct connection,
Okay.
at least of how they were presenting the movie. I'm gonna give kudos definitely to the movie at that point, that oh, this lady that she's talking to is actually Sandy, and Sandy on that vision, she didn't see the vision correctly. She thought that Jack was murdering Sandy, but when you think back, she only saw blood and a knife going in and out, but she didn't see who was being stabbed. And the person that was being stabbed was actually John, because Sandy took the knife from John and from Jack, and and killed him. And from that day onward, she decided to kill all of those people that abused her, and that she no longer was gonna be a victim, and she was taking charge of her own life.
Yep.
And this is the point in the movie that I gotta be honest with you, I was kind of sympathizing with her, because quite honestly, that they were abusing her, like literally.
She wasn't a murderer. Well, I mean, she was a murderer, but she wasn't doing it. She was she wasn't your typical antagonist, I guess I could say.
In that scenario when you see it, but obviously it became something that she started killing all these guys, and then you realize that all these guys are the ghosts that have been following Eloise.
Yeah. Yeah.
That basically what they were doing is clamoring for help, but she was not able to listen to their cries of help. And at this point, you also make the realization that her mother, that also was wanted to be a fashion designer, that also was in London, took her life. And it only makes you wonder. At no point, I think they mention it that she either stayed on the same place, or there was any connection with Sandy, but you can only infer, like do it on your own, like make the connection. Oh, maybe she was experiencing all of this and it was too much for her to put it together, and she didn't have that help to be kind of to move on. because as her mother, they were very stubborn and they didn't want to seek help.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting because I didn't make that connection in my head. I didn't really associate her mother with any of those activities, but it does make 100% sense that she could have been in a similar situation to Sandy, and she didn't have the strength to be able to, get out of it or do what she was or do what Sandy was doing, and ended up doing what she felt necessary and taking her own life. So yeah, that's definitely a good point. I didn't really make that correlation. Uh, I guess because they didn't really go into a whole lot of detail about her mother. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
I made the connection because when Eloise was searching for the murder records from the 60s, and John conveniently, like you just said, happens to be there with her tapes, kind of with that, like that Sting movie song. I mean, like every step you take,
Yeah,
like the
exactly. I think John was low key Batman.
Batman.
He was everywhere.
Well, I don't know. Anyways, I remember at that point that they were looking through the tapes and the all news articles. Uh, he says like how can I help you? And she's like, you can start with the 1966 tapes, and it's like, man, that's a whole year. And she's like, London is a bad place, or
Yep.
something along those lines. And that's kind of what made me realize that her mother, if she went to the same place like they established at the start of the movie, that she was pursuing the same career, and she took her life. She, being a descendant, they are sensitive to the kind of paranormal activity, you could call it that at this point. Maybe she was not staying at the same place that Sandy was the landlady, but she was seeing all the ghosts pursuing her, and she not being able to make the connections. She decided to take her life.
Yep.
So obviously, it's like Sandy, the old woman that we now know is the landlady, is telling her that, oh, don't worry, you won't tell anyone. And, oh, I promise I won't tell anyone. It's like, no, I know you won't tell anyone. And that
Yeah, that when she said that, I was like, oh, yeah, we knew what was happening at that point.
yeah, it's like, no, don't worry, I won't stab you. But she was gonna stab the John. That she told her, if I don't come back in 15 minutes, go come after me. Good,
Yeah,
good thing that she had that help, because otherwise she would have I don't know what Sandy would have done with her or any other person. And you also realize uh, that she had a policy: no men visitors. And you realize,
at
oh,
night, at night.
yeah, you realize that, oh, also because of the experiences that she had. And
Yep. Yeah.
I gotta say that was the first foreshadowing, but I didn't make the connection, to be quite honest.
I,
And
I didn't either, and there was another a foreshadowing much earlier in the movie that I didn't make the connection until I was reading about it afterwards, and that was when she was on the phone with Ellie, and when she first called her about the apartment, she gave her address in the exact same way she gave Jack her address on the first night she met him to when he asked if he can take her out the next day.
I didn't catch up upon that. I do know that they were using a lot of the "you know where to find me" kind of a quote,
Right.
but I didn't initially pick up. I was picking up other. Uh, I was taking the scenery and other the verbal non-verbal language of what was going on, because
Yeah.
it piqued my interest what they were doing behind the scenes, especially of the whole duality of playing with mirrors and lights. And that kind of went over my head.
Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't. It wasn't until afterwards that I saw that when I was doing a little bit more reading about the movie afterwards. So yeah, I didn't make that. I didn't make any of the connections until it hit me in the face. So don't feel bad.
Yeah, and think that the last imagery that we see is she seeing Sandy on her old days when she was young, going up a crystal stair that is shattering with each step that she's taking. And I gotta say, the work that they do with the music is also fantastic because
Yeah.
you notice when she was having the visions, there was this song playing there. There's always something there to remind me, kind of
Yes.
a deal.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then the Alois, that is the cop, like he's saying, oh, like the song, and essentially the song is playing when they meet on the bar, the Alois song by Barry Ryan. It's like, oh, and then they're playing another song when she's face to face with Sandy, and they're going up the stair, and she has the knife that is going to stab her now. Um, it's not until that point that they realize that when she goes to make a phone call in the room, she sees that all the men are actually asking for help,
Right.
and they're giving the phone. And at that scene, you see Sandy opening the door and seeing all the ghosts of her past that I believe they allude to that all the bodies were actually buried on the same apartment complex in
They
some
were
way.
in. Yeah.
In
That's
the
why she made that comment about the smell.
yeah the
Um.
yeah
Yeah. So she blamed it on the drains or something like that. But yeah, because all those bodies were buried inside that
I,
building or room.
I do gotta say 60 years buried in the walls and all that. I know for especially from watching the series CSI. That might have been a very bad complication unless she was applying some sort of solvent to the
Yeah.
meat or flesh. But
Well,
let's not get that deep.
you can't get that deep. Yeah.
Yeah, but at that point, it's kind of when she's realizing that she needed to be punished some way, but she was gonna take her life, and Louis stopped her like, no, don't take your life. But it's like, no, you go, you save yourself, save the boy. That's the last thing that she said, like save him,
Yeah.
like do what I was not able to do. I was not able to save myself or anyone around me, and she basically punished those around her for the things that, in a way, I can say justifiably were abusing her. Um, Not saying that murder is the correct answer, but still, at that point, it's the kind of a position that her trust was betrayed. Like all her dreams were shattered. She has no way out, and what most likely was the case, she was not able to go back to her parents or a family either for being stubborn, shame, or the other reasons that we might not know about. But she had no way out. So the only way that she saw it was actually taking matters to her hand and killing all of
Yeah.
them. And basically, the last time that we see Sandy is burning on the room with the whole building.
Yep.
And they don't say how much time goes on, but basically, Louise was finally able to do her fashion gala, and some mother is going in the pasarela, kind of showing her dresses, and her grandmother is there. You see John that apparently recovered over from being stabbed, and the movie ends on uh, you think a heartwarming theme when she sees her mother,
Her mother. Yeah.
and and her grandmother said your mother would be proud of you. I know she is because she's still having the visions, so somehow she's managing. Because then later you see that she seen Sandy show how
Yeah.
she looked the first time that she looked at her, and I don't know where she came to the acceptance that this is already part of herself, or if this is something that she's experiencing at the moment. Because obviously at that point the movie ends, and you're left with that note of like, well, this is something that she must have learned how to live with, or is experiencing from now on.
Yeah. Exactly. I was on. I got the impression that basically because the entire Sandy story was over, that she wasn't going to see those visions anymore, because it's wrapped up, it's done, So, or like you said, she might have gotten him under control, or she understood at that point now what she was seeing, because obviously in the beginning she didn't quite understand what was really going on, if because it turned from being a very optimistic to obviously extremely nefarious. So now, what well, you talked about a lot that you liked about the movie. Was there some aspects that you didn't like?
Oh yes, I definitely mentioned that I was gonna. I understood when the reveal was done, but I didn't feel it the same way when she realized that the ghosts are actually people claiming for help. I kind of didn't like the way that they made the reveal because it's like the hands are holding her down on the bed when she's trying to run away from
Right, right.
Sandy, and when she's trying to reach out for the phone, the ghost is kind of takes up the phone and kind of stretch out his hand with the phone, and she's like, "Wait, what's going on here?" And then she started listening, "Help."
Yeah, yeah.
Or kill her, and everyone's
They
gonna
want to
kill
know.
her.
Yeah, I didn't. I agree, and I guess you don't know whether that was just in her mind or not. But I didn't like the aspect if this was actually what they were going for of the visions actually crossing over into reality, where they could physically grab her and hold her back or whatever. You could make the argument that maybe that was just in her mind, but if that was the case that they were crossing over, I wouldn't have really cared for that aspect because nothing has told us that was able to transpire throughout the entire movie.
I gotta say, it was just that kind of again, everything else in the movie for me was very well put together.
Yeah,
In my view, it's just that reveal that is rather important. I would say, what why would they be holding? I guess like all the stories of all that the dead obviously envy the living. They were trying to reach out and grab and try to kind of grab upon life that they no longer have. I could make a lot of justifications, if you want to call it that, for that thing, but maybe it could have played out somewhere else, somehow else.
yeah,
But aside from that, no man. Out of the top of my head, I think that was the thing that kind of when it happened, it kind of put me a bit off of the tension that was going on, especially with the
yeah,
scene that I mentioned earlier, like Sandy going up the stairs on her younger persona, or at least how Louise looked at her, and while she was stepping very firm and decisively on the stairs, and how she was shattering those stairs, like I'm ascending to something else, and I'm ascending so firm and so sure of myself that even the ground that I'm walking on is shattering.
yeah.
That's the sort of imagery that I fell in love with, and right after then I see that scene with the ghost and kind of put me a bit off. But aside from that, I love everything else.
Yeah, I agree. The cinematography and the style, it was a very stylistic movie. Were excellent. I think the main thing, or probably the one of the only things that I really didn't like in the movie. Well, there was two things. One, I didn't care for the cop character as far as when the older gentleman, because it was so intentionally he was being so intentionally obtuse that the entire situation of her thinking that he was Jack and whatever, that could have just totally been nixed just from him as not being acting like
I
a weird.
A weirdo creep. I
Right.
agree with you 100%, and I will say this, and this is kind of maybe a conversation for another time. But like I mentioned to you, at least not to the audience, I play D&D on the side, and I've been recently DMing for a game. DMing is like Dungeon Master. The person is kind of a, you want to say it in the same terms as a movie, like filmography. It's like I'm directing the world, or how the characters are interacting with their world. And there are times that your audience, or in my case, my players, are smarter that are, even though they're playing other characters. But you cannot give all the information away straight up because it doesn't create the tension. And
Sure.
and and I'm no way in matter I'm saying, let me put this clear. I'm saying that I'm doing the same legwork as a director. I'm just saying that in the presentation, I can relate and understand when you're putting a world together, how the tools that you have to make the world first believable and have your players be invested. If there's a very fine line between keeping that suspense and just doing that sort of thing that for you can be infuriating by being cryptic, even though you know that people that are consuming your content are smarter than that.
Yeah.
I gotta say, not that I'm giving a pass on that, but I can relate to why.
No,
Yeah,
and and you're 100% right, because that's just the nature of storytelling. That's the nature of movie, because most 9 times out of 10 you can create this world like that, and your storyline wouldn't progress if something quote unquote just normal happened, just like that. Because but that would have really eliminated a lot of the tension and the mystery around the movie and whatnot. So they almost had to do it. You could also say that you don't know what happened to him, because they said he used to be a police officer. So what happened that he's not a police officer anymore? Was he emotionally detached because of things that happened in the past and whatnot? They didn't explore that aspect of that character, and that's fine.
yeah. You think that they could have been done a bit more legwork on developing that character, so it wouldn't be so cryptic in the manner of he could have just the reveal at that point, not having him been hit by a car, but
Right.
my name is Alois, I'm not Jack, and it's like, and in a way you realize that because she was saying Jack, 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 and he was not responding either when she was running after him.
Yeah, yeah. That wasn't. I mean, that's more me nitpicking. I
Yeah.
think the one aspect that I don't want to say took me out of the movie, but nor did it ruin the twist, but it soured the twist a little bit to me after the fact. Was the entire time that we saw her visions, it was all accurate up until we saw that
The murder.
uh, the murder. We saw Jack kill um, Sandy.
Sandy.
Sandy. We saw Jack kill Sandy. So my and I understand why they did that, because now it throws the viewer off as to, okay, so now we are not going to think that Sandy's going to be the bad person and or the murderer. So when the twist happens, it's like, oh wow, this is a big shock now. But I don't know if it necessarily earned that, only for the fact that why was that the only vision that was not accurate throughout the entire movie?
Um, I gotta agree with you, but also again in the storytelling part of things, it was the shock that she already was doubting herself because when she was on the club, she was seeing the ghosts and Sandy dancing on the floor, and obviously that at that point was not something that happened that she was having a vision, but she transpolating uh, either her curse or gift, however you want to say it, and what immediately happening on her surroundings. Be it that Yocasta actually put something on her drink and she was hallucinating, what they make allusion to when she's on the police station. That hey, did someone put something in your drink? Were you partying or something? And she
Right.
remembers that Yocasta bought her drinks, and she already been very antagonistic and being a bully, like you mentioned. Uh, it makes you wonder if she
Yeah,
was hallucinating at that point and was not having a clear vision of
and
what's
that's
going
definitely
on.
fair.
Yeah.
And that's one aspect that's one of the mystery aspects that I like, versus where sometimes they don't expand on a character and leave it as a mystery that I don't like. And that's that exact scene that you were talking about in a club. We don't know, we'll never know, was that drink spiked or not. We don't know.
You will
We
never
don't
know.
know.
Yeah.
And I like that. I think that's cool. I like a little bit of mystery sometimes when it comes to that. So you can kind of come up with your own observation. Yeah, like, yeah, it wasn't. No, it wasn't at all. It was just regular drink. So they tried to give you the impression that it was, but they never really called back to it. It was, oh, I don't want to say it was a throwaway scene, but you could dismiss it if you wanted to.
Mm.
But other than those 2 points, really, I don't really have much bad to say or stuff that I didn't like about the movie. I liked every other aspect, and all the aspects that you really enjoyed, I enjoyed as well. You look more into some of um, the what's the word I'm looking for, but the interpretations as far as visuals than I do. As far as like interpreting the staircase falling and her, or who her going up the staircase and correlating that with things that are happening in her life. So I don't usually into that quite as much, but the visuals and the cinematography, the colors, the music, it was beautifully shot, beautifully acted. It was, yeah, and the most good thing I could say about a movie is I enjoyed it. I sat down, I watched it, and I enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, I gotta completely agree with you there. And after all that dissertation, you know what time it is.
I do know what time it is, and if I'm gonna have to give this movie a number, score on a 1 to 10, I will go ahead and give it an 8.
I gotta say, I'm pretty much with you there. I'm only getting points away for that reveal at the end. Like I mentioned, like if the, initially was the thing that kind of put me a bit off. Like at the climax of the movie, like I don't know if there were other hints that those ghosts were victims at some point, but you're not looking at them as victims at any point because they abused of Sandy through all the visions and movie, and as far as they know, they were uh, bad people while they were alive. And again, not saying that maybe they needed to, how do I say? It's hard to say. Maybe don't want to say something that might compromise me here. Like, oh my, maybe they actually deserve to die.
That they deserve. No, yeah,
But
it to me it reminds me of what that Chris Rock's skit where he's like, I don't. It's not. He says something to the effect of like, it's not right, but I understand.
I think I'm gonna go with it and say exactly those same words. Like, I understand, but I don't completely agree how they presented that last reveal. So for, an 8 for me. So overall, if we put the two scores together, I guess we're giving the movie an 8 out of 10.
That's what's interesting is I came into this review with 7 in my mind, but listening to some of the aspects that you talked about from the movie that I didn't pick up made me bump it up to an 8.
Oh, and definitely the what you mentioned earlier, what you read upon as well. I was already with the mindset of giving it an 8, but it also clicked what you said earlier that you read about it, and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't see it that way either. So it definitely was good having the conversation and kind of seeing
It's
the two different viewpoints upon the same media.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And to me, I think it's one of the not I want to say few movies, but it's one of those movies that you look forward to watching again to try to pick up the stuff that you missed the first time around. Not that it's so in depth as far as so where some of these movies have so many different mysteries and aspects and stuff that you blatantly like. Tenet from Christopher Nolan is the obvious one that you have to multiple watches to try to figure out all the different things that are going on. But this more now that now you can kind of look at and appreciate some of the foreshadowing a little bit more and maybe try to look to see exactly how that when I watch it again, I'm going to pay more attention to how Sandy presents herself to Jack when she first meets her, and how she presents herself to Eloise when she first talks to her on the phone, that kind of thing, and see how that correlates.
I gotta say, the only other movie that I think of this director is Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Okay, and it's funny, I've not seen that one.
That this is the second movie that I see from this director.
The one everybody seems to really enjoy is Baby Driver, and I've not seen that movie, and I probably should because I like cars. But for whatever reason, I never saw it. But I did really enjoy Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. from him, so I was a little bit familiar with his work, although those were comedies
Oh,
versus.
he said. Oh, but that. Sorry, I also saw Shaun of the Dead.
Okay, there you go. Then
Yeah,
you lied.
I'm a bad liar.
You're a bad.
I didn't remember he was the same director.
Yep, yep. He did Shaun of the Dead. He did Hot Fuzz, which I also. Hot Fuzz was a great movie too because it was one of those where the first half of the movie was literally boring. I was bored, but the second half was so good it made up for it, and I loved it. So yeah, he did that one. I think he did The World's End as well. I
Oh,
don't think
okay.
I saw that one though.
No, I haven't seen the other one.
But I really enjoyed this one. And like I said before, that the acting, I really have to give kudos to all the actors involved. They did such a great job.
Oh,
But
definitely.
but again, Anya Taylor Joy, she she's special, dude. She commands that scene whenever she's on screen. It's a different feel with her.
Oh yeah, yeah. I said earlier, definitely was on Queen's Gambit that she kind of caught my attention.
Yeah,
And I gotta say, well, also like I mentioned earlier, this is the third movie that I see of Thomasin McKenzie, and she's a young actress, kind of doing a few roles. And from the three movies that I've seen so far, this I think is my favorite of her. Obviously, was the main actress. The other one was Old
yeah.
and Jojo Rabbit. I like more the role she played on Jojo Rabbit, but I guess we can leave that for another maybe conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I thought she was excellent and old as well, but it wasn't a performance that was. Well, I mean this was not a knock on her. It's just the nature of the movie. But it wasn't a performance that you look back and like, wow, she was really good in that.
Be honest with yourself. You were not paying attention to any of the acting. You were just watching Mid-Sized Sedan.
I love Midsize Sedan, my favorite character in all of film. But
Well, I gotta say, everybody, thank you for tuning in. And Kevin, do you got anything to say to the audience?
Um, no, you know what? Just if you guys agree with our thoughts, with our review, or disagree, go ahead and leave some comments on our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever flavor you like to leave comments on. Let us know. If there's some content you want us to check out, definitely let us know as well. And as always, tune in for our next episode. We'll be talking about something that you're not going to be ready for.
You're not gonna be ready for. Thank you, everyone, and take care.